I was reading recently some interviews and research coming out in the area of confidence. And it was interesting that 65% of people replied that they struggle with displaying and showing competence at work. And it's such an incredibly important thing. So today I want to explore confidence and how we may display greater confidence in the workplace. An important question in any leadership development or in assessment is, does the employee appear to be confident? Are they growing? And confidence is something that can be learned. Today, I want to look at 10 different ways that we can help display greater confidence in the workplace. Number one is triggers. Know your emotional triggers. All of us have different things that happen to us that can knock our confidence. And it's really important for us to be self-aware and to explore what's going on when we begin to feel a little bit anxious and our confidence takes a knock. Very often we can hone in on certain triggers that happen that lead us to feeling a little anxious, fearful, and takes a knock out of our confidence. So therefore, the first thing is be more self-reflective. Examine those moments where you feel you have really low self-confidence and ask, is there anything that just happened? What's going on? Are there any triggers that I can point to? Because once we become aware of those triggers, then we can go into the next point, which is visualizing a different response to that trigger. First one is triggers, now it's that visualization. What visualization is, it's this ability to put yourself into a situation and to visualize something different. Therefore, let me give you an example. I was working with a client a few weeks ago who talked about the fact that whenever the boss walked into the room and sat down when they were presenting, all of a sudden they had this surge of anxiety and their confidence level dropped. That was a trigger. The trigger was the boss walking in. Now we move to visualization. So what I had them do was to visualize a different response. So I said, before your next presentation, before you go to bed and when you wake up, I want you to visualize yourself responding differently to that trigger. I want you to see yourself in all the richness of the senses in that room. I want you to see yourself being super confident. I want to see yourself when someone asks a question, you're able to respond with ease. I want you to see yourself whenever the boss walks into the room that you're able to smile, and instead of become anxious, you're actually feeling a little more excited because he gets to see you in action. The richer you can make that visualization, the more powerful the impact it has. So number two is visualize a different response to your anxiety or fear that is triggered by certain events. The next three have all got to do with different elements of our nonverbal communication. Number three is eye contact. Eye contact's incredibly important. Sometimes when we are fearful, sometimes when we lack confidence, our eye contact can be a little bit fleeting. But to be able to maintain good, strong eye contact is a sure sign of confidence that we are meeting this person as equals, that we are not feeling diminished or lacking in confidence. So pay attention to the level of your eye contact. Pay attention to perhaps people that make you uneasy or people that drain your confidence. Take a note of what's happening to your eye contact. Number four is, of course, the handshake. Very often when we greet people, the handshake becomes an important part of greeting and ending a meeting. Our handshake so often is something we do day in, day out. We don't even think about it. And yet our handshake is critically important to establishing how confident we are in the eyes of another person. So take some time to think about your handshake. Your handshake should be something that is straight and vertical. Your hand should be dry. And you should mirror the firmness of the other person. In doing that, you come across as someone who is confident. Because let me tell you, if you have a weak handshake, that leaves a lasting impression on the other person. And then we have the smile. The smile is a sign, of course, of warmth, of openness. And also a smile is a sign of confidence, that you're happy where you're at. So be careful as well that in situations where you feel anxious or fearful, sometimes the first thing that goes is our smile. People can see the anxiety in our face. Try and be committed to that smile, because if we begin to smile in our face, we begin to generate as well the emotion that goes with that smile and the happiness it creates. And really, confident people tend to smile more. Number 6 is posture. Here's an interesting thing. The more confident we feel, the more space we take up in the room. Now, if you've never thought about that, just think about it a little bit more. Because think about what it feels like when you lack confidence. You're a little bit fearful or anxious. What happens with our posture is that we try and make ourselves smaller. It's almost like the tortoise that goes back into the shell. Our shoulders sometimes can collapse, our head goes down, and we minimize our presence. What happens when someone feels confident, of course, is that our head goes up, our chest is puffed a little bit more, our body is more erect, and we are more open. So be careful about your posture. Is your posture open or is it closed? And here's a nice trick that I use sometimes. If you're feeling nervous before a meeting, why don't you, instead of looking at the phone, you remember your mobile phone? Because what happens, you automatically go into a closed position as you look at that phone. Instead, buy a broad page newspaper, something like the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or wherever you live. And so you're stretching out, you're assuming this broad, open posture, and that can impact our perceived level of confidence. Number 7 is dress for confidence. So you've always heard dress for success, that it's important to dress up for the meeting, to be appropriate in your dress. And I think all of that absolutely is something that's important. But also I would suggest dress in something that makes you feel confident. Dress in something that makes you feel that you are special. Because very often our clothing can set us in a certain mood as well. And we want to make sure that our clothing is matching the confidence that we want to think and feel. Number 8 is increase the amount of explanatory gestures. Now, gestures are something, of course, we do naturally. All of us have a certain amount of gestures, be they lower on the end, and so we don't use very many, or be they lots of different gestures. What we find out that research shows us that those who tend to use a lot more explanatory gestures are seen as more competent. Also, the use of gesturing is incredibly important because it helps us remember things as we say them. So research has shown that children who are learning math problems are able to have better retention of the maths, the more gestures that they use in trying to speak about the problem. So have an opportunity to perhaps video yourself on your phone having a conversation and just see how much gestures you use, and are there opportunities to increase the amount of gestures. Number 9 is, all those filler words. That's number 9. Filler words really detract from our confidence and people's perceived level of our confidence as well. If people use a lot of filler words, people begin to think that we're nervous, that we're really not feeling confident in the moment. Now, how do you get rid of filler words? You know, there's many different ways. Some people believe that you should speak and then have someone else count all your filler words and tell you at the end you used 37 so's, 14 buts, 15 ahs. I actually think that that's re-traumatizing you. A better way is to slow down. You know, very often I find that people who have problems with filler words, the rate of their speech is actually too quick. And what happens when we speak too quick is that our words are coming out quicker, that we're mentally processing what we're about to say next. And so therefore we begin to use more filler words. So learn to slow down, learn to take little breaks. If you're preparing for a presentation, perhaps I would suggest that you practice it alone, and after every sentence, stop and take a small breath. Not that you're going to do that on the day, but you're getting into this rhythm of slowing down how you speak. That is a great way of addressing the problem with filler words. And number 10 is exactly what I'm doing at the moment. Hands in the pockets. Take your hands out of your pockets. Because Our hands, as I've said before, are incredibly important when it comes to gestures, and also our hands are visible signs of trust as well. If our hands are covered, if our hands are in our pockets, it's distracting and people are wondering what's happening with those hands. So therefore, don't give people the opportunity to be distracted. Have your hands visible and have them above the desk. So confidence is an inner game and it's also an outer game. Hopefully you've picked up some great points in this video. Address some of those inner points of visualization and learning your trigger points. And then take on some of that confident body language as well so that other people are able to see that you are fully confident in the moment. If you've enjoyed this video, I invite you to watch the next video, which looks at how we can influence people in the workplace. Oh, and if you're enjoying the content in general, I really invite you to subscribe to the channel. Every week, every Wednesday, we come out with another video which is jam-packed with great information on leadership, on presentation, on communication, and on emotional intelligence.